All right, welcome back everybody to the show. If anybody noticed, this is supposed to be Diz's episode, but she is feeling a little under the weather, so today we have a special guest host. So this is Bev.
And this is some raccoon who wandered into the studio.
Also named
Brad.
And this is...
Trigger warning.
All right, so today I am doing an episode with a raccoon, and it's going to be a disaster, not the show, the topic, and we are going to start out with some trigger warnings per usual, and the trigger warnings are a train crash, obviously, if you read the title, death of the passengers, of course, and some descriptions of people being trapped, so if you're claustrophobic, there's a little bit of talk about some injuries, but not a lot of detail on that. So, have you heard of the Eschede train derailment, Brad?
I am new to that one.
Okay, so let's get started. So, originally launched June 1st, 1991, the Intercity Express in Germany had air-conditioned coaches. The seats had headphones and offered choices of music. Some seats had television screens, and it basically looked like business class cabins and airplanes, which is what they were kind of going for. They were an instant hit. 2 years after their introduction, more than 65,000 people per day used the ICE, many of them choosing train travel over air travel. They had an 800-seat capacity. And in the 7 years since they've been operational, there had never been a fatal accident within the ICE train systems.
Very nice.
Yeah. June 3rd, 1998, 5:47 a.m., ICE 884 departs Munich. It was traveling at up to 155 miles per hour in some areas along its route. At 10:56 a.m., they are 40 minutes from Hamburg, their final destination. There are about 400 people on board at this point. There's a sudden bang, and then a shard of metal shoots up through the floor between Jörg Dittmann, his wife and son, shoots up between their seats in coach number 1 of the train. It creates a huge gaping hole in the floor and is basically stuck there. And this is just an aside here. Coach 1 is not the first car, obviously. It's the first passenger carriage, but the first actual train car is one ahead of it. It's the power car of the train. So what would normally be an engine, but it's the power car. Dittmann tells his family, get out, get out, get out, get out.
Yeah.
In carriage 5... Edith Schaeflein and the other passengers actually heard the sound of this, and everyone kind of jumped up trying to figure out what it was. But then they all kind of settled back down. Everything went back to being calm because the train continued along smoothly. They didn't see any problems, so they just chilled out again. In carriage 12, Udo Bach is absorbed in his work on his laptop. He said he didn't hear it, but he said that's probably because he was concentrating on his work. From what I was watching, the episode I was watching, I don't know if the people in the 12th car could hear it, but it's possible.
This sounds worrisome.
Yes. 10:57 a.m., the ICE is traveling around 127 miles per hour.
Okay.
So Dittmann leads his wife and son out of coach 1 to find a train conductor. He finds a conductor in coach number 3 and tries to get him to pull the emergency brake to stop the train. The train conductor says that he has to inspect the damage personally before he can stop the train.
What?
That's company policy. So Dittmann leads him back to the first car, which takes about a full minute to get back to the first car. 10:58, the train actually is starting to sway as Dittmann and the conductor are racing back to the first car. Dittmann said that even then the train conductor didn't really show any signs of concern. I mean, this has been 7 years. They've not had an accident. Everything's been fine. I guess the guy was thinking, Maybe he was overreacting to something. I don't know. At this point, they are approaching a roadway bridge for the small town of Eschede, and they're traveling at 125 miles per hour.
Oh, God.
Dittman and the train conductor got to the spot where the metal shard had pierced the floor, and he was about to point at it when the disaster struck. Erica Carl lives in Eschede, which is a small town 81 miles from Hamburg. Her house sits 65 feet from the railroad tracks and the bridge that spans the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
And Erica and her husband Dieter are sitting in their kitchen, drinking coffee, discussing some changes they wanted to make to their garden. And that's when they hear the train. And her husband says, "I think it's a plane crash." After the deafening noise, there's suddenly deathly silence. Erica said not even the birds were singing.
I believe that.
Through the glass pane on their front door, they could see part of the train. It had come to rest right by their front gate. She told her husband, "There's an ICE laying outside." The only damage to her house was a broken window pane above her front door. And there are pictures of this, and it is literally laying in front of her house. Some of these 50-ton train cars. It is so disconcerting.
It's hard not to actually laugh a little bit about the pain that
The window pane. Yeah.
Just that.
It's like, I don't know if it was a piece that came off and hit it, or the sound, or what, but like, she looked through a glass pane on her door to see it, but it was a glass pane above the door that actually broke.
It's just like this tiny little bit of absurdity in the middle of what's probably about to be terrible, but I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, exactly. So Dittman, his family, and the train conductor are in carriage 1 still. They only suffered minor injuries. Basically, they were knocked down. And they're able to walk away from the wreckage.
Mm-hmm.
Further back in the train, though, the news is not good. 11:05, 6 minutes after the crash, emergency services began to arrive, and the enormity of the crash becomes more evident. If the train derailment weren't bad enough, the double-lane 300-ton bridge collapsed. 8 of the ICE coaches are now in an area barely larger than the length of a single carriage.
Whoa.
So 8 of these cars are now squished into an area that's the length of one of the cars. And hundreds of people are trapped inside of them.
Oh my God.
It gives me chills. Udo Bach, the one that was in train carriage 12 and had been working, is now seriously injured. He's trapped. He's lying there. His leg is paralyzed. He's afraid he's going to die. He starts calling for help. One of the first policemen who arrived on the scene is Andreas Effenhausen. He hears Udo's calls for help, but he can't get to him. He tells one of the rescue teams that he's made contact with a seriously injured person in one of the train cars, but they have to call for specialized equipment. The rescuers had to actually end up cutting off the roof of the train to get him out. And he was in excruciating pain, so the paramedics gave him strong painkillers, which had the side effect of stopping his breathing temporarily.
Oh.
He then went into a coma, was put on a helicopter, and flown to Hanover. Of course, he has no memory after a certain point of this. He survived, but he was permanently injured. He did, I think, end up able to walk and stuff, but it did permanently injure him.
Okay, so he didn't lose the leg?
As far as I know, he did not.
Okay.
By 11:25 a.m., initial estimates put the number of dead at 40 and the number of seriously injured at roughly 40. Edith Schaeflein is trapped in coach number 5 with injuries to her legs. A fireman appeared, asked her how she was. She said, "I'm fine." But she was in shock and she couldn't feel any pain. He helped her out of a window on the other side of the carriage. Despite her injuries, she's able to climb out. She's taken to the hospital. By 1:45, 87 people had received emergency treatment. 27 were airlifted to the hospital. Rescuers have no idea how many are still trapped. That night, they found the bodies of 2 railway workers that had been carrying out routine maintenance on the rail line when the crash occurred. So they weren't on the train, they were actually on the rail line itself, working. The death toll is now 81. Over the next 48 hours, rescuers continue their search. No one else is found alive at this point. The investigation starts, both the official one and the one in the media, of course. The first theory is that the media puts forth, basically, that there was a car on the railroad tracks. And in the scenes from the crash, the pictures, the video, and everything that the media is taking, there is a crushed vehicle that you can see. But after the officials looked into it, they ruled it out. The power car, the lead car,
Right.
the one that has like the aerodynamic snout and all that, is in good condition. It shows no evidence of a collision with a car at 125 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And there's no way that a train can hit a car without the lead train being the one having hit it, basically. Right. After looking at the car's registration, it was discovered that the vehicle actually belonged to the train company. It was driven by the employees that were working on the train line, the two that had been killed.
Mm-hmm.
They had actually parked on the bridge above the tracks, and when the bridge collapsed, the car fell and then was crushed by all the train cars hitting it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So they were like, okay, moving on. It was not the car that caused the problem. Their first clue came from 4 miles back down the railway. They found damaged railway tracks. And then in the first carriage, they found that length of steel lodged in the floor. And of course, that's the shard that Dittman was trying to get the train stopped about, you know. Investigators wanted to know, hey, where did that come from? Yeah. What was that? They realized that Dittman and his family were sitting over the rear wheels of coach number 1. So when they look at the train, they find that one of the wheels is seriously damaged and the steel rim has broken away. So investigators conclude that this piece of steel that impaled the carriage was actually the steel rim of that wheel.
Oh my God.
So a portion of the wheel rim got straightened out, basically kind of shot off the wheel, and it's got stuck through the floor and up through the cabin of the train. The other end of it was hanging down and was repeatedly hitting the tracks. It was like the cross beams of the tracks.
That's like a problem that's only a matter of time before it becomes a much bigger problem.
Right. It was the one that was causing the damage, like, as far back as 4 miles. They were like, okay, well, that's important, obviously, but it's not enough to derail this technologically advanced train. And it traveled another 4 miles before the derailment and the collision. So what else happened? What else caused the problem? They looked at the area of track before the crash site and found that the derailment technically happened 650 feet before the bridge. And they know this because there's damage to the track at that point, too.
Mm-hmm.
The point where the train careens off the track is at a same point where the branch line crosses the main line. So there's 2 sets of points that can divert the rail traffic from the main line to the branch line. To guide the trains through these points safely, there are rail guides known as check rails. And investigators find that one of the steel check rails is missing. It's been completely torn away.
Oh.
So after looking thoroughly through the crash site, they can't find it. Inside coach 1, investigators find what they're looking for. In a corridor, a few feet from where Dittman and his family were sitting, is the check rail. It had also gouged through the floor and into the ceiling of this corridor in the same car. They realized that the steel rim of the wheel was still stuck in the train. As the train approached the bridge, the rim essentially it scooped up the check rail and caused it to shoot up into the carriage. It broke away the steel rail and caused it to shoot up into the carriage.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact of that caused the wheels to lift up and take them off the rails enough to derail the train.
Jesus.
Then, as the train continued, the wheels of the second car forced the branch line open, which caused the train to begin traveling on 2 separate rail lines. The power car, Coach 1, and Coach 2 traveled on the main line.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the wheels on Coach 2 opening up the branch line, Coach 3 and the rest of the train began traveling on the branch line.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have this train essentially traveling at 125 miles an hour.
In 2 different directions.
With 3 cars traveling on the main line and the rest of them traveling on the branch line.
Oy.
So now they know the final piece. The train was a quarter of a mile long, and it ended up squished together in a small space. So they decided to look at the bridge to determine if the design of the bridge played any part in the disaster. Because even if they were traveling like that and they derailed, how did they end up crumpled up like an accordion, basically? Because it seems like they would have just continued traveling as they derailed and kept sliding forward if there was nothing there for them to stop against.
I was trying to figure out how you meant with that as far as them being squished into the same space. I was like,
Yeah.
Do you mean they're kind of side by side, or do you mean
like an accordion?
How are there anyone alive in that?
They look at the bridge. It had 2 supports, one on each side of the tracks that sat about 6 feet from the railroad tracks.
Mm-hmm.
As Coach 3 moved onto the branch line, it swung outward. When it swung out, it hit the support pillar for the bridge.
Oh.
And it basically knocked it out from under it. So Coach 3 passed under the bridge. Coach 4 actually cleared the bridge as it was falling. This is how fast the train was going, too.
Right.
That 3 hit the thing, knocked the support out from under it. 4 was traveling fast enough. It cleared it as it started to fall. It actually catapulted off the track and landed in some trees.
4 did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez.
The back half of Coach 5, which was the dining car, was completely crushed by the concrete of the collapsed bridge. Edith Schaeflein was sitting in the front half of Coach 5.
Oh my God.
If she'd been in the back half, there was no way she would have survived. It was actually compressed to about 6 inches in height. The debris of Coach 5 and the fallen bridge then blocked the path of the rest of the train, resulting in them sandwiching together at a high rate of speed. So the bridge and Coach 5 then acted as a barricade, and then all the other train cars just kept heading one after another at 100 miles an hour, sandwiching together, and that's how they ended up so compressed in that tiny space. Instead of just in an open space, they would have just kept sliding as, being derailed, which would have been dangerous, but not as bad.
Not being flattened bad, necessarily.
Right. So the disaster happened because a few small things that normally wouldn't have caused a problem on their own happened in just a way that they created a catastrophe. So the steel rim comes loose from the wheel and shoots through the floor of Coach 1. The steel rim scoops up the check rail, causing it to break away and shoot through the carriage as well. The force of steel on steel lifts the train enough for the wheels to come off the track. The wheels on Coach 2 hit in just the right way to open up the branch line, causing the train to travel on 2 rail lines at the same time. Coach 3 hits the support beams for the bridge, causing it to collapse. The bridge collapses on Coach 5, which blocks the path, causing each car to then impact the one in front of it at a high rate of speed. And then this kills 101 people and injures 105.
Jesus Christ.
That is a lot of people. So,
yeah.
As with any disaster, people want to know what caused the crash and who's to blame. With 101 people dead and many suffering life-changing injuries, the world was looking at Germany to figure out what went wrong. Bullet trains, or high-speed trains, were being used in Japan, Italy, and France also at the time. Amtrak was so impressed with the ICE design, the popularity, the safety record, before this disaster, that they had actually been considering buying the design for use in the U.S. at the time.
And honestly, let's face it, this is a terrible accident, but still, their record's probably still better than the other ones.
Yeah, it was really good. And I would love to have a high-speed train in the U.S.
Me too.
So, with the whole world watching, German investigators set to work trying to figure out what went wrong with all this stuff. So they had to figure out, starting with the first piece of the puzzle. And the first piece, the catalyst for the whole thing, was that one train wheel that came apart, basically.
I'm surprised that wasn't enough to cause more of a problem just by itself.
Yeah. I guess because of all the other wheels, they were like, well, if just one of them failed, it wasn't enough to derail the train.
Yeah.
Originally, the ICE trains had monoblock wheels, which were single cast wheel sets. The passengers complained about the noise and vibrations with these wheels, especially in the dining car, where the glasses would basically vibrate across the tables.
Mm-hmm.
So the company, Deutsche Bahn, realized that the resonance and the vibration came from metal fatigue. So, intent on making their superfast trains a luxury experience, managers of the railway company turned to their engineers to fix the problem. And the engineers ended up opting for a design that had been used in other applications in Germany. Referred to as a wheel tire, it consisted of a wheel body surrounded by a 20 millimeter thick rubber damper and then a relatively thin metal tire.
Okay.
They didn't test these on high-speed trains before making them operational, but they did work at reducing the vibration and the noise.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The problem was that these wheels were actually being used normally for trams in Germany. And of course, trams travel at much lower speeds than trains.
Like 15,
that can reach
20?
Up to... Yeah. Trains that reach 155 miles an hour, trams that can reach like 15.
That's just like separate pieces that could like delaminate from each other at that speed.
Exactly. But there wasn't really a way for the engineers to test them without actually putting them on a train.
Right.
So they had to basically use the tram data and then theory to determine the safety and limitations of the wheels.
Right.
So, in July 1997, almost a year before the crash, the company that operates the tram network in Hanover, a company called Ustra, discovered fatigue cracks on trams running at about 15 miles an hour.
Mm.
Ustra began changing their wheels out before fatigue cracks could form, which was earlier than the legal requirement.
See, you don't see that sort of proactive safety
I know,
thing.
Right? They're like, hey, we don't want an accident to happen and people get hurt, at 15 miles an hour. So they reported this finding to everyone else that used the wheels, or wheels with a similar design. And this included the railway company.
Mm-hmm.
They reported it to them too. They were informed in late 1997. And keep in mind, the accident happened in June of 98. Ustra said that they were told by the train company, we haven't noticed any problems in the trains. So, the Fraunhofer Institute for Structural Durability and System Reliability was responsible for investigating and determining the cause of the train crash.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out that the Institute had actually told railway management back in 1992 about their concerns regarding the failure of their wheel tires. During their investigation, Fraunhofer Institute found that the design of the wheel didn't factor in the dynamic repetitive forces the wheel would undergo when in use on a high-speed train.
Yeah.
They believed that the design lacked an adequate margin of safety, and that there were key points that were missed during the design process. First, the tires on the train were flattened into an ellipse shape as the wheel turned through each revolution.
Oh my God.
And think about how fast and how heavy the train was, the friction, the heat,
Yeah.
And that the fatigue effects would reflect that. And fun fact, they estimated the tires went through around 500,000 revolutions during a typical day of service.
That tracks.
So, tracks.
Oh
Good
my
one.
God.
So,
Sorry.
if you think about it, as that round tire turns, each revolution, it's being flattened into an elliptical shape, like, throughout the whole part of it. Like, the whole wheel.
It's like they're like, I forget how it's called exactly, and I'm barely awake. But they're like high-speed video of certain things, like being slowed down, like things that you kind of assume are completely rigid objects.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at high rates of speed, their shape does change. In some cases,
Right.
if you slow the video enough, it's like visible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like, they kind of snap back to their original shape for the most part. But a
Yeah.
lot
Well,
of
like I
these
said, this
materials,
is,
they change a lot.
yeah, these train cars were, I think that the video I watched said 50 tons each.
Yeah.
Something like that. They were really heavy. The tracks, the heat, the friction, 500,000 revolutions a day
Yeah.
on a typical day of service.
Yeah.
Of course, the fatigue is going to reflect that.
Yeah.
Second, in contrast to the monoblock design that they originally used, the cracks could form on the inside as well as the outside of the tire.
Mm-hmm.
Third, as the tire wore thinner, the dynamic forces increased, which would actually make the cracks grow more. And fourth, any flat spots, ridge, or swells in the tire would increase the forces on the assembly and accelerate the wear on the tire.
Right.
So these are all the points that they thought, y'all didn't take this into consideration when you were making this tire for your freaking high-speed train, as opposed to a tram. And of course, regular maintenance and inspection is part of any company's routine. So they said, okay, what about that? You had to have noticed. Did you not look at these tires? Did you not check them? This was another missed opportunity. Originally, the train company had advanced testing machines to check their wheels for signs of metal fatigue, but they kept getting false positives. So they decided that it wasn't working right, and they did away with the advanced machines.
Lovely.
False positives. Well, they're not working correctly, so just forget it. So at the time of the crash, the wheels were just getting a visual inspection with a flashlight. Despite what the technicians thought, a week prior to the crash, 3 separate automated checks indicated that the wheel that came apart was defective. Investigators also found a maintenance report generated by the train's onboard computer from 2 months before the crash. It showed that train staff filed 8 separate complaints about the noises and vibrations generated by that defective wheel. But the train company didn't replace it. In fact, they said that their inspections were proper at the time and that their engineers could not have predicted the fracture of the wheel.
Right.
So if the wheel hadn't come apart catastrophically, then the train wouldn't have derailed and there wouldn't have been a crash. Or if the wheel had come apart on a long open stretch of track where there were no switches to flip and no bridges to hit, then the derailment would have sucked, like I said, but it would have been much less deadly if there had been any fatalities at all, because the cars would have had space to just slow down on their own, just run off until the inertia ran out, basically.
Right.
They might have turned over, they might have whatever, it would have skidded and the people might have been thrown out of their seats and that would have sucked. But we're looking at broken bones, bruises, stuff like that, instead of people being crushed to death and that kind of thing, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's why the investigators also put a little bit of the blame of the crash on the design of the bridge. The bridge was 300 tons of concrete that spanned the railway with 2 thin support beams on either side of the tracks. When coach number 3 knocked the support out from under the bridge and it collapsed, the debris crashing onto the cars below and the blockade that it helped form with coach number 5 then caused the fatal pileup of the train cars. They had nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than continuing along, like I said, until their inertia ran out, they were heavy, fast objects slamming into an immovable object, each other, and the bridge,
Right.
piling up on each other one by one at 125 miles an hour. And when they rebuilt that bridge, it was a cantilever design, which eliminated the support post next to the train tracks.
It's like how that one lady died in 13 Ghosts, only a lot faster and a lot more people.
I do not know that reference, but okay.
Some of your listeners might.
Okay.
Hopefully.
We have 5 listeners, maybe 6 by now, so if any of the 6 of you know that, well, you're one of them, so...
Yeah.
True. That's what Diz and I always say. Anyway. So lawsuits were filed against Deutsche Bahn, the railroad company, And they paid 30,000 Deutschmarks.
Deutschmarks, yeah.
Approximately 19,000 US dollars to the family of each person killed in the crash.
That seems low.
They settled with victims later and said that eventually they paid the equivalent of over 30 million US dollars to survivors and families of the victims. So that was just the 30,000 was the initial, I think. And then they settled other lawsuits later, I think. They also paid part of the cost of the official memorial for the victims. On August 29th, 2002, 3 engineers, 2 working for the railroad company and 1 for the steel and engineering company ThyssenKrupp, were put on trial for 101 counts of manslaughter and 105 counts of bodily harm for those injured in the crash. The families of the victims were actually angry that the people facing the court were engineers and not higher-ranking members of the railroad company.
Oh, of course.
And I'm actually, glad that the family members were pissed off that it wasn't, the CEOs and the bigwigs that were not in court, because it's always the little guys that get held responsible for stuff. Yeah. So they felt like the people on top were responsible for the lives lost, not the engineers who worked for them.
Right.
So, on April 28th, 2003, the case was dismissed against the 3 men, who were actually facing up to 5 years in jail if they had been convicted. It was determined that the court did not have enough evidence to convict the men. They were actually ordered each to pay a fine of approximately $11,360 US dollars each.
Mm-hmm.
We all hope that if we make a mistake, we learn from it. And when it's a disaster like this one, it's the only silver lining we could find. So these are the changes that were made. After the crash, all of the ICE trains were fitted with the original monoblock design wheels. Railroad tracks were checked for areas where switches were near obstacles like bridges or buildings, basically anything that could collapse or cause additional damage during a crash. The railroad company changed their policy so that their conductors can pull the emergency brake without having to personally investigate an issue first.
Oh my God.
And side note, the emergency brake was actually in coach number 1 and was accessible to the passengers. So one of them could have pulled it instead of waiting for the conductor, but no one did. So Dittman or one of his family members or any of the other passengers in that first train car could have pulled the emergency brake as well.
They're probably just not wanting to be improper.
Not wanting to be the one that slowed everybody's trip down, not wanting to be, yeah.
Or maybe accidentally screwed something up too. I mean, because...
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also installed windows with specific braking points and available hammers that would be available to the passengers. And this was due to rescue personnel having difficulty getting in through the thick, nearly unbreakable glass to reach people after the crash.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's actually really cool because it has the window, the hammer is above it, where you can get it loose or whatever. And then it'll have a little piece that comes down over the window with a little red marker that's basically here I am. And it's that's the point that you hit that will break the window. It's really cool.
Gotcha.
I'm that's a smart idea.
I'll bet they probably break in a predictable way too.
Probably so, yeah.
And that makes, safety a lot easier to work with around things
when
they operate predictably.
And so the memorial that was created for the disaster is really pretty. Planted next to the tracks where the crash occurred are 101 wild cherry trees, each representing one person who lost their life in the crash. A path winds through the cherry trees to a memorial wall which is inscribed with the names of those who died. The path can also be followed up some stairs to the street and a gate. On the other side of the street are several more stairs that lead up to empty sky. And that's the story of the Eschede train derailment and crash.
That was a whole lot of oh no, and also a whole lot of oh no, why did they let it get that bad?
I know.
And I mean, the answer is always capitalism.
I know. It almost always is money, though, but money.
Yeah. Mm.
Udo Bach was, on his way to some kind of work conference or something. But like the Dittman family decided they were going to the coast, and they were taking a train because they were like, this way we don't have to deal with, a kid in the car for several hours. And, it was not just all people on the train for work. It was some people for pleasure and some were business. Some of the people, I'm sure, took the train all the time. For some people, it was like, this is my first time ever on the ICE. And it's one of those things where you just think, what are the odds that this would be the one? After 7 years and all these trains running, what are the odds that that would be the day and that would be the one train where that one wheel happened to come loose and happened to hit in a way that it derailed the train and hit that bridge? And they were 40 minutes from their last stop. It's like that was the last stop. They were almost done with the entire trip. It's crazy to me. And I know everybody on the way to work could get hit by another car, and you could, life is fragile and you never know when it's going to be done. But stuff like this just makes it more in your face, I guess, that you just never know when it's done.
Right.
And it kind of gives me chills and makes me think, if you think about it too much, you just would never leave home. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
But if you don't leave home, then the house could collapse on you, and then you die anyway.
Or depending on where you live, natural disasters can take you out any second. You never know.
That's true. Anyway, so we missed Diz today, but thank you, Brad, for sitting in.
You're very welcome. I hope I've been a reasonable substitute teacher. No homework today.
You did good.
We're going to watch a video during class next time I'm here, just to make up for the rest of me there.
Oh, well, I think you did great for a raccoon. So, raccoon substitute teacher.
Thank you. Please hand me a donut.
He does like shiny things, so that's good.
I do. I collect rocks and stuff. I like amethysts and quartzes and just everything.
All right. So next time, I think Diz will be back. Hopefully, she'll be feeling better, and I guess we'll catch you then. And until then,
watch for deer.